Welcome to the IoT Chat, where we explore the trends that matter for consultants, systems integrators, and end users. I'm Kenton Williston, the editor-in-chief of Insight.Tech. Every episode, I talk to a leading expert about the latest developments in the Internet of Things. Today, I'm talking about the revitalization of retail with Trevor Sumner, the CEO of Perch Interactive. Last year was a tough time for stores, but now in-person shopping has come roaring back. What's behind this trend? What can retailers do to keep the momentum going? And how can they bring together the best of online and physical retail to boost sales in both domains? Trevor, I'm glad you're here to answer these questions.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And can you give me a quick summary of your role at Perch?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Trevor Sumner. I'm the CEO here at Perch. We do interactive retail displays that use computer vision to detect which products you touch, and then wake up like Minority Report and automatically start telling you about it. I'm a longtime startup entrepreneur. I've been through a bunch of different high growth companies that have IPO'd, merged. I've started a company that grew to over 100 people and sold to the Blackstone Group. I'm an avid mentor at various different accelerators, occasionally angel investor. I'm an adventure scuba diver and have scuba dived in every continent, including Antarctica. And I'm a native New Yorker.
Very exciting list there.
Yeah, I like to get in there, man. Let's get them excited.
Excellent. So over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, of course, things have changed a lot, particularly in the last 18 months or so. And I'm wondering how that has affected your business and how the company has evolved.
Yeah, absolutely. And COVID has been this technology accelerant in so many different ways. And while we were focused on in-store retail, and certainly, some of our biggest clients were at the time Macy's, and they closed their doors, they very much updated and took a lot of the products off the shelves. Interestingly, now they just recently reported that foot traffic is back above 2019 levels, which is amazing. We've focused a lot of our technology on grocery and mass retail, so that those investments really paid off, as these were effectively essential businesses, and investing even more in the in-store experience. And so COVID has been this really interesting technology accelerant where brands need more insight into what's happening in store in real time. They need ways to connect to the shoppers without a sales associate, because there are a lot less sales associates and they're focused on other things like inventory management and making sure that their products are on the shelves. But because of that, we're seeing a lot of our customers think about how to use our technology to unify commerce and convert in-store shoppers into omni-channel shoppers. It's been really exciting and also really hard, because a lot of our partners were struggling with what these changes meant. And of course, that vision has been changing almost month to month. So it's been a very uncertain environment in which to operate, which is difficult as a leader of a company. But at the same time, the technology acceleration has made our product set even more inevitable.
Yes, a couple of things I want to touch on there. One you talked about was, of course, the shift in balance towards e-commerce during the pandemic. For very obvious reasons, people were not going into stores. And I'd like to know where you see that trajectory going now.
It's fascinating, right? I mean, I think there's this narrative that brick and mortar is dead, which is absolute lunacy. Brick and mortar has been increasing 1.5% to 2% year over year. Last year, we had a deadly pandemic, which meant that people were literally risking their lives to go into stores. And yet it was a flat year for physical retail. Last year was a boon to e-commerce. I think this year it'll be harder to maintain and extend those gains. In fact, CoreSight just reported that e-commerce penetration at department stores has declined year over year. So I think it's uneven too. I think it's hard to talk about retail in generalities. So like last year, grocery stores did very well. Target did very well, essential businesses, but also pets did extraordinarily well. Sporting goods did well. Home goods, Home Depot showed a 30% year over year growth. To put that in perspective, just the growth at Home Depot is a Fortune 50 company, right? And so,
wow.
And you look at apparel, and that's a whole different story in terms of the declines and the tough year that they had. So Amazon lost e-commerce share, even though they grew, they didn't grow as fast as the brick and mortar stores that had e-commerce presence. And part of that is because the physical stores themselves delivered about 40% of e-commerce orders for the first time. And so there's certain industries where the store has to be a key part of the fulfillment and thinking through customer acquisition, ordering and fulfillment as three different separate pieces of the puzzle that are blending in all these different ways, it becomes less and less helpful to think about e-commerce separate from brick and mortar.
Bunch of really interesting points there. So first, I have to say that I feel like I contributed more than my fair share to Home Depot over the last year. So I bought a house in the middle of all this nonsense and have got to enjoy just the skyrocketing lumber prices and everything else. Similarly, I'm like, yeah, okay, I basically didn't buy clothes last year. Why? I'm not going into the office. I could be in my pajamas all day if I want to. And so having said that, I'm going to ask you a very general question about this idea of fulfillment and where you see the role of the physical stores going forward. Is it mostly a fulfillment role? Is it mostly a discovery role? Is it different by sector? How's that going to work out?
So let's be very clear. We talk about this future where, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if I could just order anything, anytime, and it just shows up at my door? We just got that last year. How terrible was it? How soulless was that experience? I bought a Christmas gift for my nephew that I never saw, never wrapped, wrote the card on Amazon. I don't even know what it looked like. Probably some fake scribbled thing on a nondescript card. And didn't really get to see him opening it except kind of on Zoom. It was fine. But was it like me shopping for a gift for him? No. We crave shopping to connect with products. This connection between people and products is fundamental to shopping. And so I think increasingly we're seeing people think about the store in the back of the house for fulfillment, but the front of house isn't going away. It's just going to be optimized in all these new and exciting ways, in part powered by IoT. Having local Walmarts everywhere near you so that they can more optimally ship to you and think about last mile fulfillment is really incredibly interesting on a business level for margins and for costs and optimizing profits. But it's definitely not about optimizing the shopping experience. And so I think brick and mortars can be extraordinarily strong on a continuous basis.
Your story about the Christmas present brings to mind the movie Brazil. And there's this scene where the protagonist goes into an office and there's just this stack of pre-wrapped presents and his boss is like, oh, here you go. Merry Christmas. And it's just like so generic and anonymized. Yeah, it definitely feels like that. I think a lot of times when you're shopping online, that is just a box, very impersonal. So what can stores do to really enhance that connectivity with their products and the very personalized experience?
Yeah. So what we do at Perch, what I think is pretty fundamental, is the way I think about it is online, the way you connect with products or learn about products is you click on them. And when you click on them, you go to what's called a product detail page, or PDP in the industry. And it's got, videos, ratings and reviews and all the stuff that you're looking for research. And fundamentally, we keep telling ourselves that the reason that we go in stores is because it's better for product discovery. But ironically, it's also the only place where you don't get that PDP product level detail information, which is why 87% of people start their product research online, because that's where the content is. So I see this future of in-store experience about bringing the same tools and digital into the store to combine the best of physical and digital shopping, right? So I can touch the product, I can look at the product, I can get the joy of holding it in my hands and looking at multiple different products at once in a physical and real way, in a way that a list of SKUs on Amazon just never gives me, but also deliver the product storytelling. If you look at the brands that you really feel an emotional connection to, fundamentally, those are stories that are being told. And in fact, there was a recent study that went out that you're 50% more likely to have an emotional connection with a brand in store than online if you just do e-commerce, right? Because you could do that storytelling and you have that physical kind of connection. And that's a little bit why so many people are spending so much money to do all this brand advertising outside of the stores, is because they don't have those capabilities in the store. So fundamentally, what we're doing at Perch, we use computer vision to detect which products you pick up at the shelf. And the moment you pick it up, it wakes up and starts telling you about the product. So it could be videos, ratings, reviews, other complementary products, maybe comparing products in a product family, and providing all the tools you need to understand whether you really want that product and that product's right for you. And so to me, that product pickup is the same as clicking online, right? So you can click on a product online to get more information. Now, those clicks at retail at the shelf that you do when you pick up a product and look at it, that's an expression of interest. And now we can provide the right message at the right time and help brands connect on a meaningful basis with the shoppers that are considering them.
Nice. So all this discussion about brand and the personal connection totally resonates with me. So what it brings to mind for me immediately is the Fenty brand by Rihanna. And I really like that brand for a lot of different reasons. Most notably, it's products designed for a diverse target audience, right? So it's different skin tones, different body types in a way that many other brands have been pretty terrible about addressing. So just what the product does is pretty great and pretty exciting. But the fact that it's coming from Rihanna and it's got all that exciting creativity behind it really just adds to that brand story. And so I totally get how this concept applies to things like cosmetics or handbags, or if we're talking about jewelry, sort of these sort of things that are, let's say, more fashionable than functional in certain ways, right? But how would this work if you're talking about not something like clothing, but something that's like, a refrigerator? What's the story element that drives those sort of products?
I think of what we do as product level marketing. So I would ask you, which categories of products do you want to look at? Ratings, reviews, videos, and complementary products. What would you say? Like all of them? Right?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, right? And that's like reflecting back on this last 18 months, that's been a big part of the struggles I've had across the board is, yes, I don't want to go into the grocery store and get my groceries, but also there's been so many different options for getting things delivered. Which one is the best one for me? And that's been a little hard to determine.
Yeah. So it sounds like you just bought a home and you went to Home Depot to buy a fridge, and there are over 300 different fridges. They can't fit 300 fridges on the showroom floor. So they tell you there are all these different configurations, and you're like, kind of like maybe LG. I don't know. And then within LG, there are probably 20 different SKUs and they're different configurations. How do you pick a fridge? Seems like a really hard problem, right? But if you go online, you can actually visualize the different configurations of the fridge. Are you doing a double door, single door? Where's the ice maker? Where's the water filter? What type of shelving configuration can you have? Is this efficient? What's the freezer look like? What's the balance between the freezer and the fridge? Can you multi-zone? Does it have different finishes that can match your kitchen? There's so many different questions that you can answer that would be very hard to do with physical retail on its own.
Yeah, I think I accidentally picked a really good example because as you're saying this, I realized, I've actually been seeing online ads for the latest generation Samsung refrigerators. And one of the things that they're pushing is it's very customizable in its appearance, right? You can mix and match all kinds of different color schemes. And somebody who's trying to figure out what to do with their kitchen, that's a real big bonus, right? That not everybody offers me. I can get the stainless steel or the gloss black or whatever, but this is a totally different idea of just making something that's perfect for your space. And I'm like, yes, that's great. Love it.
So that's a simple example of like, hey, I click on a product, tell me about what options I have available to me. Now, we deliver a lot of media and product level media out there in the market, but also what we're seeing is there are all these tools online that help you decide what your needs are. So let's stick with the fridge for a second. So in an ideal experience, you go into Home Depot and you fill out a quiz, right? Because if you talk to a sales associate, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. Maybe they're going to push something on you because it's the one that they're familiar with, or it's the one in stock, it's one on sale, it's the one they get the biggest commission on. You never know. But what if there was a tool that said, okay, tell me, how many people are you feeding? How many kids do you have? How important is the freezer? Where do you live? And then it said, based on your answers to the questions we just asked, here are 10 fridges that we recommend, and here's how they compare so you can do it. Now that sounds like a wonderful experience to try and figure out which fridge you are and to give you the confidence that you need. We're picking fridges, which is, frankly, a little bulkier than generally what we do because you're not touching fridges, but we actually have done a fridge concept. But think about that for every product set. You mentioned beauty. We're working with Johnson & Johnson to bring their Skin 360 tool. So it's a front-facing camera that looks at your face and says, okay, based on your skin type, based upon your wrinkles or your sunspots, dry spots, it does an analysis of, many different points of your face and says, asks you a couple questions about what you care about most and says, oh, here are the products that we would recommend. Whether it's finding the right refrigerator, the right electronics, the right computers, the right TV, the right deodorant, all these things require some digital content. And we're trying to bring that to the shelf where 85% of transactions occur.
You threw in a kind of oddball example there in some ways of deodorant, right? So far in our conversation, I've been kind of envisioning what Perch is doing is being centered around high consideration, high cost sorts of products. Obviously, deodorants don't really fit in there. So presumably you're doing business, with brands that have these sort of consumer packaged goods. And what does the model look like there? And how is it different from something like cosmetics?
Yeah. So our business model is basically per screen, and we generate. What's amazing about our approach is it typically generates somewhere between 30 and up to 188% sales lift. So about 80% sales lift on average, right? 80% sales lift has to equal the cost of the program, which happens to be somewhere between $150 to $300 per month per screen, depending on volumes and some other things. And so you're right that there are certain categories that lend itself very clearly to this type of technology. Anything high margin, high education, high brand building in mass retail and CPG, and interestingly, grocery is our fastest growing market segment. It's really about beauty. It's about baby. It's about pets, and it's about health. And going full circle to, hey, what about deodorant? What does that look like? I mean, do you know what's in your deodorant? There's a lot of talk about aluminum and, is aluminum good or bad for you? And how important are natural ingredients? And, how often do you sweat? Do you need something that's a deodorant or also an antiperspirant? Do you care about natural ingredients? We could see this going lots of different ways. Now, to be fair, we haven't done anything in the deodorant side of the house. But again, this is just the role of education. And right now, it's fascinating that the physical store where 85% of transactions occur is this digital desert of product content where you can research these things. And that's changing. And so one of the things that's really remarkable about what we're seeing right now is about 1% of digital media spent is happening in store where these 85% of transactions occur. So there's a multi-billion-dollar shift to driving digital in store. And it's going to be done in a couple different interesting ways. I think they're going to be digital signage networks that are on the walls that are basically banner ads for promotional space for people. There's going to be digital at the shelf that's contextual, reacting to what products you touch, or it'll do front-facing cameras that do demographic segmentation. So me as a 45-year-old male will get a different message than a Gen Z woman. So it'll be exciting. It'll be personalized. It'll be contextual. And right now, there are billions of dollars being spent going into this because the store is a giant black box, not just for media, but also for data and what people are doing. And so I think that's the other area that's really driving this expansion, is to start understanding how shoppers shop in store. And now that we're shining a light on that with sensors and IoT and data, it turns out some of the things that we've always thought to be true aren't really true. And it's causing us to rethink the way we merchandise and market. And it's going to lead to a revolution in the way we think about the in-store experience.
Do you have an example of bad assumptions that people have been using for years that are being totally debunked now?
Yeah. So I think that the greatest one, we just did a large launch with Purina across 200 grocery stores, and they did an end cap. So that's the area at the end of an aisle. It's really valuable space. And there's something called a planogram. And basically it's a diagram of where you put your products on the shelf. Is it on the top shelf, at the mid shelf, is on the left, is on the right, etc. And if you ask anybody in retail, what is the most valuable area of the planogram on an end cap, they will say eye level. They'll either say eye level, or they'll always say the same thing, which is eye level is buy level, right? It's such an ingrained axiom that there's an idiom for it. Eye level is buy level. And so I asked them, is it true? And you look at it, and all of a sudden they're like, I don't know. That's what I've always been told. And the answer is, while it is true that being at eye level is beneficial, it shows about a 25% engagement and sales lift to be at eye level versus at middle or lower in the lower shelf. it turns out that the edges of the end cap are more valuable. They show about 35 to 50% sales and engagement lift. And nobody knew that, in part because earlier studies just looked at the aisle, and because the aisle just draws a long period, there aren't really edges, right? And we showed this to Purina, we showed this to our customers, and they're like, oh my God, this changes everything about how we think about planograms and which products to put in which positions and how we merchandise. And that's just one example of just changing norms. There are a lot of areas where we just agree we have no visibility into. So I'll give another example is Johnson & Johnson. When we launched with them, they had Kerry Washington for Neutrogena and Jennifer Aniston for Aveeno. And then on the bottom shelf, they had Clean and Clear, which was a new launch for them. And they said, we don't have a spokesperson, so we're just going to use Instagram influencers. Can Perch tell us how much that hurts us not to have a spokesperson? And so we can look at the conversion ratio from click to screen to look at digital engagement and from click to sales and take a look at that. And what we found was that the Instagram influencers were actually 22% better at driving them to engage with the screen and drove 10% additional sales lift. I think the real answer to the influencer versus spokesperson game is it's different for different people. If you're a boomer or an old Gen X like me, maybe Jennifer Aniston and Kerry Washington are better at converting me, but for Gen Z and millennials, maybe Instagram influencers are. And with front-facing cameras, we can start testing these things and actually just provide you a report and say, here's the content that influences women and men by age, demographic. You can look at sentiment analysis, eye tracking. All this stuff is coming, and it's doing it in a way that's seamless, that's privacy protected. It's all anonymous. It doesn't record your identity. None of the video makes it into the cloud. So it can do this in a way that doesn't sacrifice privacy, but helps the brands get all this data to a black box where most of their sales occur. And that's what's really fascinating to me, is how all these sensors and data can shine a light into this black box and really change the way that we think and work.
So Trevor, I got to say, you're doing good work to make me feel like an old man. You're hearing about these influencers. So I've got a 10-year-old, and let me tell you, she cares a lot more about what Mr. Beast or some Minecraft speedrunner thinks about things than like a George Clooney or a Brad Pitt. That means nothing to her.
Yeah, it's changing generationally, and people bring, going back to e-commerce versus stores, 82% of millennials and Gen Z prefer to shop in stores. So stores continue to be the center of where it's at, but we've got to merge some of these new behaviors, new desires, new demands for information, right? There's a lot of social shopping that happens in store where people text their friends or take pictures and other things of products. How do we enable social shopping as fundamental to the physical shopping experience? There's fascinating ways that you can do this using digital and screens and mobile and integrating them all together.
Speaking of that integration, right, I think a key question that's been lurking in the back of my mind is that as we started talking about the beginning of our conversation, in some ways, this is nothing new. People have been talking about omnichannel and unified commerce and so forth for quite some time. And in fact, I think it's pretty well known at this point that a lot of people are doing comparison shopping. If they're looking in, say, an electronics store, they'll be checking what the alternatives are on Amazon, right? Or even at the competitor store if they've got something in stock down the road. But I think there's still a ways to go to even take the existing systems and really make them a cohesive, coherent experience. And then, all these sort of additional sensors you're talking about adds another layer of complexity. So what do you see as the path forward in bringing all of this rich data together and giving the customer, a really pleasing, coherent experience that's informed by all this data?
Great question. I think it's that the reliance on the mobile phone, the over-reliance on the mobile phone has actually been a challenge for retailers, right? So if I'm walking in a Best Buy and in order to get more information about a product, I got to pull up my mobile phone. Where am I going to go? Is it the Best Buy app? Is it Amazon? Is Best Buy going to lose the sale because you forced me on my mobile and now I'm going to do comparison shopping and I'm going to just pick on the best price? And of course, Best Buy has a price guarantee to kind of help ensure that you get it while you're there. But there's once you send them onto the mobile phone, you are sending them out of the shopping experience that you own and into the World Wide Web. And it can be anything. And you really want to keep them there. You want to have it heavily integrated. And this is why all the major retailers are launching loyalty programs, shopper rewards, and Target Red Circle, you get 2% cash back, or CVS Care Pass, you get 20% off their generic products, because they want to keep you in the store, in their world, and financially pay you to do that. The question's really more about how that how the data gets put together in a way that can make these experiences more cohesive. And I think that's actually one of the things that COVID really accelerated, which is to make this happen, you have to have all the product content accessible via API, know the inventory in the store, online, all these different places. And that's not just a simple foundational layer that you need to deliver these experiences. And pre-COVID, it was not there. And because of COVID, so many stores had to launch buy online, pick up in store. All of a sudden, they're like, oh, we absolutely need product information to be consistent. I need to know where it is in the store, what's my inventory, and be able to send orders per store to online, delivered. And so they had to create these foundational layers. And that is going to accelerate our ability to provide these type of experiences to connect people between products and shoppers in more meaningful ways, because that basic building blocks have been built. And so that's been a great acceleration as part of this. Now, the next part is, great, how do we determine context so that we give you relevant things? So we got all excited about beacons about 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. And then, people are like, actually, I really hate beacons, because as I walk through your shop, you keep on just sending me, here's a coupon, buy this. And your phone keeps going off. And you're like, no. I need to find a way to turn this off, because great experiences need to be contextual and they need to be relevant. Tell me about the thing that I'm interested in. One of the reasons that people are launching these loyalty programs is so that I can connect your online shopping to your in-store shopping and know on a product and SKU level basis. But ultimately for us, we think that the most important signal is, which products are you interested in right now? And those are the ones that you're touching. And those are all the different types of signals that you can meld together. And they're all sensor-based, IoT, to be able to bring that into store. And so some of that will be connectivity to the mobile phone, to get identity, to get integration to loyalty rewards and mobile apps. And that's why there's such a big push for mobile, at first for mobile's use, but long-term to be this connectivity to the store where you can scan products, take pictures of products, where it dynamically sends you information on products that you're interacting with, for cashierless checkout, all these type of things. The mobile phone is a really key piece there. But to me, there's a balance between not taking people out of the physical shopping experience and throwing them just into the mobile phone. It has to be blended together. And again, all these building blocks are finally coming together with 4G and 5G in store. Walgreens is lighting up 9,000 stores with 5G. It's all for the ways these devices, sensors can all start talking together in store. And it's going to lead to a Cambrian explosion of new ways to think about the merging of digital and physical commerce.
Yeah, I agree. And it does lead me, though, to a question, which is, at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is delivering an experience and a set of messages, the right time, the right place to the right person. And I'm curious how that actually works at Perch. You've got the technology platform. How does the messaging work? Do you have partners that you work with there? Is it something that's done by your customers? How does that get constructed, and how is the success evaluated?
Yeah. So what's amazing is all the real content that you need to help sell a product is already there, right? We don't shoot Jennifer Aniston videos or Kerry Washington videos. They're already there. Or the Instagram influencer videos, depending on which is most effective. Ratings and reviews, already there. Product comparison sheets, already there. If you just provide the basic levels of information that we can find online, the in-store experience gets enhanced, fivefold. In fact, typically compared to digital signage, typically shows about 1% to 4% sales lift. We're showing 30 to 80% sales lift. So it's literally an order of magnitude better to provide that level of context. And that context is key. And so the content's there. We work with agencies, we work with integrators. We work with people like Johnson & Johnson, and we had talked about the Neutrogena Skin 360 app, which scans your face and recommends skin products. They've already invested in that. The only question is, how do we bring it in store? How do we meld it in a way that engages people in store? Because a lot of people just try and put their website in store, and it's just super frustrating to a shopper. Because if I wanted to go to your website, I would have gone to your website. The shopping behaviors and interaction modes are much different. You're not going to click 6, 7 levels deep into a website in store. It's got to be cleaner information. The most important information has to be bubbled up immediately. You get 2 or 3 clicks on just product exploration. You'll get more on things like virtual try on or skin analyses or needs analysis quizzes, but you don't have a lot. It's got to be very quick. It's got to deliver value immediately. And one of the things that we find is if you pick up a product and all of a sudden the product shows up on the screen, people are like, whoa, that's really cool. What else can you tell me? And we see about 10x the engagement on the screen than typical digital signage.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, it all goes back to that question of context.
Yeah. So I joke around with one of my investors that I'm just an arms dealer. I'm helping all brands to deliver their digital messages and connect with their customers. And so brands are bringing it in and competing just like they do right now for the existing offerings. They're competing for end cap space. They're competing for inclusion and priority on website search results pages, right? So it is intense competition between brands always within the retailer because the retailer owns the traffic, the retailer owns the shopper. So I think short term, this is going to be driven a lot by brands, but long term, it's going to be driven by retailers. And if you look at it, many of the major retailers are investing very deeply in these type of digital networks. CVS Health has their health hubs. Kroger is working with a company that they bought called 8451. It's a company called Quotient Technology working at Ahold. Target, Walmart changed their Walmart Media Network, which was like buying advertising online, now includes the ability to bundle in-store screen impressions. So it's all kind of blending together, and retailers are going to offer this as a service. And I think that's the future. Right now, it's Purina getting their own dedicated end cap. But I think the future is more like what Macy's envisioned with their fragrance bars, is that every end cap, kind of like, if you think about it like an Amazon search, right? You search for, let's say, pet toys or dog toys, because I've got a pandemic puppy named Roxy. And I search for pet toys, and what comes up? It's the most popular toys. It's the Amazon curated best toy, best for price, whatever, kind of categories they put in that's curated. And then it's advertising for brands to compete to be part of that message. And I think that's what the future of end caps at retail will be, which is retailers will offer this up across multiple different brands. Some of them they'll curate because they got to have their stars there. And some of them people will pay to kind of tell their stories, to use it as a platform for experimenting with new messaging. And I think that ultimately is going to drive a lot of category lift. So right now, I'm an arms dealer to individual brands and some retailers. Long term, I think retailers are going to be the arms dealers and provide this platform for interaction, meaningful engagement, and data to each of the brands.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I say, just everything I'm hearing here really points again and again to there's a real need for a rethink of the basic infrastructure of how physical retail works that will end up looking a lot more like e-commerce.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is my e-commerce analogy. Let's look at how these businesses are managing themselves right now. Right now, they have data about the people coming in the stores, like the number of people. Think of that in the e-commerce world as like your unique visitors to your website. And then they've got data on the sales that happen. And for a brand, you may just get sales in Texas. You don't even get store level sales. So think about if you're an e-commerce site that you just look at unique visitors and sales, and you have no idea where people go on your site, where they click, if they add stuff to cart, which content changes the way that they shop, how your search results or your category pages changes buying patterns, none of that. That's where we are with stores right now. And that's why I call it a black box. And now we can start instrumenting all of these things. And if you think about what we are going to learn through that process, I mean, it's phenomenal. One of the things is like, if you get a shopper to scan a QR code or something, now you can retarget them when they leave because I scanned that puppy food QR code. You know I have a puppy, so when I leave, now you can market me as a puppy owner. We're collecting all this data that is going to be extraordinarily valuable. And I think that's why, in part, I'm so excited about stores, because stores now are the dominant form and channel. What are they going to be when we make them more profitable, more efficient, more engaging, more educational, more integrated into personalization, know what I want, all those things? How much better are stores going to be? And when you paint that picture, I couldn't be more bullish on the bright future of brick and mortar retail.
Awesome. That seems like a great place to wrap our conversation. So, Trevor, I just want to thank you again for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for the great conversation.
And thanks to our listeners for joining us. To keep up with the latest from Perch, follow them on Twitter at Perch Experience and on LinkedIn at Perch-Interactive-Inc. If you enjoyed listening, please support us by subscribing and rating us on your favorite podcast app. This has been the IoT Chat. We'll be back next time with more ideas from industry leaders at the forefront of IoT design.